So in the last video, we talked about how hard it is to really define what music is. We have various conceptions of what it can be, right? So what we can do to try and make our exploration and journey of musical cultures around the world a little bit easier is set out some guidelines for how we can think about and conceptualize what musical practices may be. So here are 5 different propositions for doing just that. Number 1, our first proposition is that the basic property of all music is sound. You need sound to have music, right? And so the most fundamental aspect of a sound is a tone. And a tone is basically any sound that we choose to identify as a musical one. We give it a musical identity. And here's what's important. Each tone has different properties to it. This is how you distinguish between different pitches and note names, different durations, and then the sounds of them too. So notice if you take a look at the graphic here, each of these musical tones has some sort of variation to it. Different lengths. Some notes are shorter than others. Different frequencies. So some notes are higher or lower in pitch than others. We can have different levels of loudness, right? We could sing a note very softly and also sing it very loudly. And this is what gives us so much dynamic. The other element to this is a property called timbre. This basically is the sound quality. It's the way that we can tell the difference between various voices and instruments, right? The way you can tell the difference between your sister's voice and your mother's voice and your father's voice and a trumpet and a flute, etc. So the basic property of all music is sound, and we use tones and we analyze tones and all their various properties to understand different musical practices. This is why we can jump back to John Cage's piece and think about whether this is music or not, right? Sure, there may not be a clearly identifiable pitch or frequency to the sounds that were in the video, aka the sound of the air conditioning, chairs squeaking, people coughing, etc., right? So it's not really a silent piece because despite the piano player not actually striking the keys of the piano he was sitting in front of, there were sounds going on, right? This is one of the main arguments people make to say that this is a piece of music. There are sounds, and the basic property of music is sound, right? One thing is that we are not, Western listening audiences are often not used to hearing ambient sounds and non-musical, non-tone-based sounds, things with pitches and frequencies as musical. We generally like to have melodies and harmonies that guide us through the song. So we question things that don't quite feature those elements. So one of the main purposes of this particular piece was to challenge the audience and to reorient their musical thinking, open and broaden their minds to think about music as being more than just melody and harmony. So proposition number 2, these sounds and silences are organized. A very popular composer, Edgar Varese, he said that music is organized sound. So there's a bit of intentionality with this, right? It's the idea that if I just pick up my keys and it jingles, would we really call that music, right? But instead, if I picked up my keys and I started playing them in a very specific pattern, we would then consider that to be music because I'm organizing that sound. So we have pieces like the Beethoven Fifth Symphony that I included below in the video underneath this that sound very familiar. Take a moment to listen to that. right? You probably already know this piece. You can anticipate where it's going. It has a structure and an organization that we're used to hearing, even if we don't listen to Western art, classical music that much. On the other hand, we have a video as well underneath that you should listen to. That's from this style of music called gagaku. It comes from Japan. And this is usually a less familiar organization than what Western art music and Western-oriented listeners are used to hearing, right? This unfamiliar organization, it sounds like there's no structure. But this music is actually written out and planned. The performers are playing pre-planned music, but it's just not done in a way where we're expecting the same types of repetitions and variations and development in the music. So take a listen to those examples and think about that, what organization means. This is why we have to keep an open mind, right, to what music may mean around the world and in various music cultures, because what we consider to be organized may be different somewhere else. And the other thing to keep in mind is that some composers also intentionally subvert organization. So think about that too. This is someone like John Cage, as we saw. He's choosing to organize sounds and silences in a way that we wouldn't expect. So again, take a listen to those videos and think about it. How is this music organized? How does it fit my expectations? How does it not?